Hello everyone, and welcome back to JAS Reviews. My name is James, and on this channel I do reviews of both music and movies, along with the occasional commentary piece, so if any of that sounds interesting to you, then please be sure to leave this video a like, and to subscribe to my channel to see more content like that. And today I am bringing you another individual movie review, this time for the much hyped up horror movie Longlegs, directed by Oz Perkins and starring Micah Monroe and Nicolas Cage. Now, if you want to talk about a horror movie that has been hyped up to the high heavens by critics and some audiences and influencers with advanced screenings alike, then Longlegs is that movie this year for sure. In fact, I can't remember the last time a horror movie has been having this much buildup in recent memory. There was definitely a lot of hype pushing this movie, and Longlegs used that to fuel their marketing campaigns in pretty big ways. Now, I think in some ways you have to be careful about doing this because a lot of audiences are going to go in with the expectation that if it's not as scary as people are saying it is, and they will leave the movie thinking that is speaking against its quality for them. While I do think that horror does have a job to get you scared, I also don't think that every horror movie is going to scare the same type of people. So, well, what did we get out of Longlegs? Let's talk about it. And just a big warning, there are going to be spoilers throughout this review. I think it's sort of hard to talk about this movie without spoiling it in some way, shape, or form, so go in with that in mind. So Longlegs is about Detective Lee Harker, who joins on to the FBI and gets on pretty high up pretty quickly because she apparently seems to have some ability to be very intuitive with cases. But in particular, she seems to have a lot of knowledge about this case around this serial killer, only known as Longlegs, who is played by Nicolas Cage. And as her and her partner, Agent Carter, continue to uncover things about Longlegs, things start to get more and more suspicious and also more and more confusing as to whether Longlegs is just a serial killer or if there's something more supernatural going on underneath the surface. So just to start off, that even though I did say I was going into this movie not expecting it to be scary, I still feel like this is one of the most dread-inducing horror movies I've seen in quite some time. Even some of my favorite horror movies last year, and I will say last year was not a particularly strong one for horror in my opinion, I just think this experience really blew a lot of horror movies out of the water that I have seen in recent times, and I'm going to explain why. But first, I just want to say that I think plot-wise, this movie is really intriguing. I think this one does a really good job at combining two seemingly disparate genres together. The grounded police procedural, along with the decidedly ungrounded and very out there supernatural elements. You start off this movie, and I do like how this movie starts off pretty grounded, and it leaves us with the expectation that what we're going to get is a fairly common police procedural where Lee Harker is investigating this killer named Longlegs. But as we continue to discover more, and as she and her partner Carter continue to uncover more clues, it's becoming clear that there is a lot more at stake here than what meets the eye. And I like the mystery that keeps on building up with that. I really do think that this movie has some clear influences from movies like Seven or Zodiac, particularly in the police procedural elements, which is what I think makes those particular plot elements work very well for me. Even though I do like the supernatural parts of this movie when they do come to fruition, I actually do like the police procedural stuff more, and I found it to be more interesting unraveling the mystery than the reveal itself. Even though the reveal is not bad at all, I did like more of the investigation elements. I think a lot of that had to do with the atmosphere of the movie too, because man, this movie is just dripping to the brim with some of the most foreboding atmosphere that I have felt in a horror movie in several years. I think the last time a horror movie filled me with this much dread was probably Barbarian, and in some ways, this movie might be ever so slightly better than that one in terms of how it builds its atmosphere. A lot of that just has to do with the cinematography as well. Man, this movie is alternately just absolutely gorgeous and absolutely terrifying to look at. There are some shots in here that will be ingrained in my memory for one of two reasons. Reason one, they just look incredible and are just strikingly gorgeous in a way. Or they are just the most utterly horrific thing you've seen on screen, and it's because Oz Perkins knows how to use a frame to combine the unknown with the horrifying. There are many places where you are just scanning every inch of the frame to see if you can see something, and then you are rewarded with sometimes you do see something, and every time the payoff is just excellent. Now, this is why I'm going to say that horror is going to scare different people for different reasons. If you're the type who prefers more, I guess, jump scare horror or more in-your-face horror, and the creature is constantly there, or there's something constantly on the edge, then this is not necessarily going to do it for you as a movie, because this one is a little more slow-paced and a little bit more of a build-up of the dread. To me, that's what makes those moments feel impactful. I liked that there weren't any jump scares in this movie, actually. It worked very well to this movie's favor, and I think it honestly would have been cheesy if there had been some in terms of what this movie was attempting to do. And when those horrific images do appear on screen, they're earned because, like I said, they're built up to. And when you see them, the impact rings all the more true to me. There's not really any character that feels particularly natural in this movie, and I think that's sort of on purpose. It gives you sort of an otherworldly, surreal feeling that reminds of Twin Peaks. And in fact, I think this movie has Twin Peaks vibes written all over it. A lot of that has to do with Micah Monroe's character, Agent Lee Harker, as well. She is not entirely normal, and I think that's on purpose. I think there's definitely some oddities about her, and you're wondering why she acts the way she does. But I like that the movie takes its time to answer that question and makes you wonder why she is so stiff and seems to be, in a lot of ways, not connected to the grounded world. Micah Monroe plays this character incredibly well. I think this is probably, it could be her best performance. It's hard to say. She did awfully well in It Follows, but I think this might be my favorite from her. She just disappears into this character so well. And I like the character's arc. It's a very interesting and sort of opposite arc for a horror character to go on. She starts off very unemotional to the world, but as the movie goes on, her emotions become more and more exposed and just more and more out there. It's just very interesting to watch her relationships develop as they become more attached, like with her mom, Ruth, or with her partner, Agent Carter, who she originally just views as just someone she's working alongside of, but she starts to care for him more, especially as she meets his family and especially his daughter. It's just a really well done arc that I appreciated a lot in this movie and made me care about the character a lot more and what was happening to her. Now, we've avoided it long enough. Let's talk about Nicolas Cage's Longlegs. Now, I think his take on this character is going to be pretty polarizing, as is usually the case with Nicolas Cage performances. The way he portrays characters, either you're going to love what he does or you're going to hate what he does. And let me just say, depending on who you are, for better or for worse, Oz Perkins lets Nicolas Cage do his thing in this movie. And by that, I mean he just lets him go balls to the wall insane. This is not a particularly subtle serial killer, in my opinion. Hannibal Lecter, he is not. With Longlegs, you're immediately put off by him from the first time he appears on screen. And he appears on screen pretty early. His appearance is off-putting and upsetting, and I think purposefully so. He looks like a 80s metal rocker in some ways, but just sort of distorted and otherworldly in many other aspects, and it works well for the performance Nicolas Cage is putting on. He is definitely acting like someone who used to be into hair metal or something is the best way to describe it, but also someone who is clearly demented. And that's not to say he doesn't have his subtle moments. They are in there in places, and when those moments work, they put you on edge because you know he's about to explode and just essentially lose it. And there's many parts in this movie where you're just sort of unsure of whether to laugh or curl up in a ball in terms of what Nicolas Cage is doing on screen. And I also think that is purposeful. I mean, there are parts where I think you are supposed to laugh because of how ridiculous the serial killer is. But then you remember what horrible things the serial killer does and how ultimately he's really no laughing matter. I think that just shows that Nicolas Cage put on pretty much a pitch-perfect performance here, and I loved what he did in the movie. Now, I'm going to get into spoilers now, so if you have not seen this movie, then I would advise to click off this part of the video and to go watch it because it is more than worth your time. But yeah, there are some spoilers I need to talk about. For example, I think one of the most interesting things about this movie, which I'm still uncovering as to why Longlegs does this, is that he always kills characters on their 14th birthday. It's not really clear to me why he does that in the movie, other than that when Lee Harker traces the kills that he does, it creates a sort of upside down triangle, which is a sort of satanic symbol in context of this movie. As the movie goes on, it is eventually found out that Longlegs and Lee Harker did meet. And in fact, the cold open at the beginning was a young Lee Harker encountering Longlegs. Definitely one of the best cold opens of the year, just utterly terrifying, by the way. And so we're left wondering why he didn't kill her and what he actually does to kill his victims. In fact, it's not really Longlegs doing the killings. Instead, it is the father of any given family killing first his wife and then his daughter. And then the father essentially kills themselves too. So it ends up being that everyone in the family is dead, but Longlegs is somehow involved in it, and we don't know exactly how. But the movie does reveal this, and I think some people are probably going to hate this reveal because this is when the supernatural elements come in. And I'll admit, maybe the one flaw I have with this movie is that they sort of had to do an exposition dump in the movie to explain how the kills happened. But essentially, what he does is he gives these girls, these daughters, these dolls on their birthday on the 14th of whatever month they were born in. And it's very weird. It's sort of still hard for me to explain now. I think the movie does a little bit of a better job. But essentially, the doll has a part of their essence in them, I guess you could say. And the doll sort of makes the whole family lose their minds in different ways. The daughter seemingly becomes part of the doll, and her memories seem to be buried into the doll, so she doesn't even necessarily know entirely that the kills are happening. The father becomes deranged, and he kills the wife first, and the wife seems to be all too accepting of the death happening, even embracing it with a smile on their face, which is very eerie. And then he kills the daughter, and there seems to be no reaction to that. And that is exactly what happens at the end of the movie as we discover that Agent Carter's daughter, her birthday is on the 14th. Now, I think some people are not going to like this because it does confirm that there is a supernatural element in the movie, and even confirms that Satan is involved in this. Essentially, Longlegs is a worshiper of Satan, and Satan is real in this movie. Much like in the movie The Black Coat's Daughter, where Satan does also, in fact, exist. But I think that makes the movie only more frightening to me, is that the fact that Satan is real in this movie, and this character is just willing to carry out whatever Satan asks them to do. Longlegs is still not even necessarily carrying out giving the dolls to the characters. In fact, the twist is that Lee Harker's mother is the one that's doing it. She is Longlegs' accomplice, because how has Longlegs been able to kill out certain murders when he is in prison at the moment? Well, he had his accomplice, Ruth, do it, and essentially she carried out the kills as a deal with him for him to not kill her daughter. But she still has Lee Harker's doll, which is why Lee Harker has been unable to remember Longlegs in an entirely reliable way. Even though I wish they had done it in maybe less of a fairy tale-like exposition dump way, because that's literally how it's told, is like a children's story. But at the same time, I think it does add to a forbidding or foreboding note, because it is the mother who is telling the story, and she's telling it in such a carefree way with the children's story I just found it to be mind-bending, and I think really worked for me. So yeah, as you can tell, this is a pretty complex horror movie, and I think I like it quite a bit. In fact, I would say I sort of love this movie, even though it is undeniably a pretty complex one to wrap your head around. I think it still works very well. If you're someone who loves surreal horror combined with police procedurals a la Twin Peaks, then this movie is exactly the one for you. And I think that's exactly why I liked it, is because of the surreal elements combined with the grounded, and how the two seem to contradict each other but still work all the same. This is a controversial one for sure, and I'll understand those who aren't huge fans of it, but for my money, I absolutely loved this one. Easily my favorite horror movie of the year right now. I said it was in one of my short horror movie reviews that it was going to be hard to beat out I Saw the TV Glow, but this one did the trick. Very strong 4.5 out of 5 stars. Check this one out if you haven't. So yeah, that was my review of Longlegs. What were your thoughts on this movie? Let me know in the comments down below. And once again, my name is James, and I do reviews of both music and movies, along with the occasional commentary piece. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, then please leave a like on this video, and subscribe to my channel to see more content like that. But until then, I will see you all in the next video.